Hello viewer, welcome to the session of MS Excel Macro 2010. In this session we will see what is the procedures and functions in VBA, what is module in VBA, and how to call procedures and functions in VBA. So objective of this session is, after this session you will be able to create procedures and functions in VBA, call functions and procedures in VBA. To get started, first we will go to the Excel workbook. Now just click on developer menu, and from here you can see the Visual Basic tab. Just click on this. Now we are placed into the Visual Basic editor, Visual Basic for application book 1. First of all, what is the procedures? So procedure is nothing but it's a set of commands to perform a specific task which is placed into a procedure, and it can be function procedure or sub procedure. So the difference between functions and procedure is that a function returns a value whereas a subroutine does not. So the basic difference between functions and procedure is that only function returns always a value and procedure does not. Now you can see in the left panel in VBA project, these are the objects of worksheets and this is the object of workbook, and we can add the another object, that is module. Just right clicking on Microsoft Excel object and then selecting the module. This way the module can be added, and if you want to remove it, just right click on the module added and then you can see remove module 1. Just remove it and it will prompt you for, do you want export module 1 before removing it? If any code has been written in this, that can be exported if you select S. So in this case I am just selecting no. Now the module is removed. So this way you can add module. Now add it. So for adding it we will just select module. Now the module is added. Now we will see what is the difference between the worksheet object editor or workbook object editor and the module editor. So difference is that if we are writing certain procedures or subroutines in worksheet object, sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, or in this workbook, that is workbook object, so those procedures and functions will be restricted to those objects only. But if we will be writing any generalized procedures, so that needs to be in module 1, so that we can call it from any of the object editor in subroutine. So if we are writing any procedure in sheet 1 and we want to call it in sheet 2, so that is not possible. But if we have written the procedure in module 1 and we want to call it in sheet 1 or sheet 2 or sheet 3, it is possible. So this is the difference why we use module. Now we will see practically how. So here first we will write a subroutine, a procedure in sheet 1 editor. So just sub test 1, and in between I'll be writing one message box to the user. This is a test. Now for calling any of the procedure we need to use keyword call. Now as we have written the subroutine, the procedure test1 in sheet 1, now we just try to call it from the sheet 2 editor. So we will go to the sheet 2 and here we will write one subroutine, one procedure sub test 2, and here we will try to call procedure test 1 written in sheet 1 editor. So for calling procedure, just use the call keyword and then the procedure name, in this case sheet 1. Now we will execute this and see. You can see we get the error, compile error, that is sub or function not defined. So this way the procedure written in object is restricted to that object only. So that procedure can be called in that object only. It cannot be called outside of that object. Now we will do the same thing. That means the procedure written in sheet 1 will copy, we will cut it from here and we will place it into the module. Now we will run the procedure written in test 2. Now you can see the effect. Now you have seen that the procedure written in module is working, meaning we have written the procedure in module and we called it in worksheet sheet 2 and that is working. So this way the difference between module and procedure, module and object editor is there. Now we will see some functions and procedures. We will delete these. Now in module 1 we will write one procedure which will be doing nothing, but it will be making the background selection as blue and font as white. So for that we will write a procedure sub format background and font. Now here we will do the task like for selection dot interior dot background color, interior dot color index equals to 23, and then we will write the code for selection the font in white. So for that selection dot font dot color equals to RGB 255, 255 and 255. Now our procedure for making background color blue and font white is ready. Now we will call this in worksheet sheet 1 editor. Now here we will write one procedure sub test 1, and in that first of all we will write a code to select some ranges. So in this case I am just writing the code for selecting ranges from A1 to D1. So for that range, first of all we will activate sheet 1, worksheets, and then the index number, that is sheet 1 dot activate or dot select. Now as the sheet 1 is selected, now we will make the selection for ranges. So for that range A1 column D1 dot select. Now the range from A1 to D1 has been selected. Now we will call the function call the procedure we written in module, that is format background font. So for calling any procedure you need to use the keyword call and then the procedure name. So here in this case format background font. Now we will execute. So before executing we will place some value here. Now we will go back to the Visual Basic Editor. Now run this. So for running I'm just clicking on run button. Now the macro has been run and it has performed a task. Now you can see the background of the selection is made blue and the font is made white. So this way we have written a procedure which has made our background color blue and the font color white. Now we will see what is the function and how to write the function. For writing a function, we will start with the keyword function, and then the name of the function. Here I am just going to make the calculation of two numbers, or in this case I am just going to multiply the two numbers. For multiplying it, I am just writing the function name multiply and for multipliers you need to pass two numbers so that it can be multiplied. So for taking the inputs, we will be defining the variables, input variables, and the data type of it. So for that, num1 as double parameter 1 and then num2 as double parameter 2. Now we have passed the two parameter, that means the input parameter we need to receive from the user, and then what, as you know, function always returns value, so we need to provide the data type of the value which will be returned by the function. So in this case, as we are taking the inputs from user as a number double, so we need to return the value as the double data type. So for that, the return value data type should be as double. This way the function is complete. Now after receiving this parameter, this input parameter from user, what the task we are going to perform here. So for that we will just write the task here, that is the returning value multiply numbers equals to num1 into num2. Now this way the function is complete. Now if we will use multiply numbers and pass the number 1 and number 2, then this function will return a value as the multiplication output of these two numbers. Now we will see how to use the function. So we will go to the sheet 1. So by double clicking we will be placed into the sheet 1. So as you can see, we have written the function in sheet 1, so we can call it from in sheet 1 itself. But if we would try to call it from sheet 2, we will not be able to call this function. So now we will see just calling this. So now in this we are doing the task multiplying two numbers. So for calling a function, we will here use directly the function name, but we cannot directly call the function name here, as function always returns a value. So we need to assign that function to any of the ranges or any of the cell. So for that, in this case I am just taking range a1 dot value, and now I am assigning the function, that is multiply numbers, and then provide the two number, in this case 12.5 and the second number is 34.5. Now we will see. Now we have used the function. So you have seen how the functions are used. Functions are always assigned to the ranges or to the range. It cannot be used directly as we call the procedure. Now we will run this and see the output. Now we will go to the Excel workbook in sheet 1 and we will see the output. Now you have seen the number we have passed in the program the output written is 431.25. So this way we can write procedures and functions. Now we will see, if we try to call this function in sheet 2, it will not work for us. Now we will see how. So we will copy this same thing in sheet 2 and see whether it works or not. Now we have copied the same procedure which we have written in sheet 1, and now we are going to run this. As you can see, multiply number functions is giving an error, compile error, that sub or functions are not defined. So meaning, as we have written the function multiply numbers in sheet 1, so we cannot call it in sheet 2. But if we will place this function from sheet 1 to module, then we will be able to call this function in sheet 2 or any sheet 3 or in this workbook. Now as this function is written in module 1, now we will run the procedure written in sheet 2 wherein we are using the multiply number function. Now we will see we didn't get any error, but it's getting executed. Just keep on pressing F8 key. Now you can see we got again the error as we have not selected the sheet 2. As here the sheet 2 is selected, so we will make the selection to sheet 2. Now we will run it again. Now we will see the result in sheet 2. So this way we have seen how to create procedures, how to create a function, what is the difference between functions and procedures, why we use module, what is the use of module. In my next session, I'll be covering more on functions and procedures. Thank you, viewer.